My parents and older siblings have not spoken to me in 8 months. They missed my daughter's first birthday, my promotion celebration, and every major milestone because I chose my wife over their toxic games. Last week my mother called me crying because my youngest sister announced she is also cutting contact with the family. My father lost his job after his anger issues finally caught up with him at work. The monthly family dinners that were supposedly so important to preserve family unity have not happened once since I stopped attending. The family tradition that survived for over 40 years died the moment I walked away. My older brother called me yesterday begging me to come back because, quote, the family has fallen apart, unquote. My sister told me that mom cries every day and dad has been drinking more than ever. They keep telling each other that I will come back eventually, that I am just going through a phase, that my wife is controlling me. They have no idea that I have never been happier or more at peace than I have been these past 8 months. The story of how I destroyed a decades-old family tradition and chose my wife over blood relatives who showed their true colors started 2 years ago when we hosted our first monthly family dinner. The story of how this nuclear family destruction happened started 2 years ago when my wife Sarah and I were excited newlyweds ready to join the sacred family tradition. These monthly dinners had been happening since my dad was a child. Every month, a different family member would host this elaborate dinner with the extended family. When my siblings and I got married, our spouses were supposed to be welcomed with open arms into this beautiful tradition. Sarah was thrilled to be included. She spent weeks planning our first dinner, researching family recipes, buying expensive ingredients, and practicing dishes she had never made before. I loved watching her excitement as she transformed our small apartment into the perfect hosting space. She wanted so badly to impress my family and show them she was worthy of being part of their legacy. But from the very first dinner we hosted, something felt wrong. My parents, my older brother Mark, and my sister Jennifer were constantly criticizing Sarah's cooking. They would take tiny bites, make faces, and whisper to each other about how the seasoning was off or the texture was wrong. My younger siblings Emma and Josh seemed uncomfortable, but stayed quiet. I started noticing that they never had these complaints when we went to other family dinners. The criticism got worse every time we hosted. Sarah would spend days preparing, only to watch my family barely touch her food while making passive-aggressive comments. She started asking me what she was doing wrong. She bought cookbooks, took online classes, and even asked my mom for recipe advice. Nothing worked. Every dinner ended with Sarah crying in our bedroom while I tried to convince her that my family just had high standards. But this was only the beginning of their psychological warfare against my wife. After 6 months of hosting disasters, Sarah suggested that maybe I should take over the cooking duties. She felt like she was failing at something that should bring families together. I agreed because I could not stand watching her heart break every month. I secretly hoped that if I cooked, my family would be forced to admit that the problem was not Sarah's abilities but their attitudes. The next dinner I prepared Sarah's exact curry recipe. The same recipe they had torn apart just 2 months earlier when she made it. The same ingredients, the same preparation method, the same everything. The only difference was that I plated it and presented it as my own cooking. The reaction was immediate and shocking. My father raved about how delicious the curry was. My mother said it was the best thing anyone had made in months. Mark said he was impressed that I had such hidden culinary talents. Jennifer actually asked for the recipe so she could make it for her own family. They praised every single element of the meal that they had previously criticized when Sarah made the exact same dishes. I didn't know yet that this dinner would be the moment I realized my family were not good people. Sarah and I sat in stunned silence as we watched my family devour the food they had rejected when they thought she made it. My younger siblings Emma and Josh kept giving me knowing looks because they realized what was happening. They had figured out months ago that the family was treating Sarah unfairly, but they had been too intimidated to speak up against the older generation. When I finally revealed that Sarah had made everything and I had just plated it, the backpedaling was pathetic and infuriating. My mother stammered that she must have been having an off night when Sarah served it before. My father said that presentation makes all the difference in how food tastes. Mark claimed he never said anything negative about Sarah's cooking. Jennifer suddenly had no memory of criticizing the curry recipe. The dinner ended in uncomfortable silence, and Sarah's eyes were open to the truth about my family. They did not dislike her cooking. They disliked her. They had spent months systematically undermining her confidence and making her feel unwelcome in the family she desperately wanted to join. Every criticism had been a calculated attack designed to break her spirit and show her that she would never be good enough for their precious family tradition. That night, Sarah told me she never wanted to attend another family dinner. She said she finally understood that no amount of effort would ever make them accept her. I realized that I had to make the most important choice of my life. The next discovery made me realize I had to act decisively to protect my wife. Over the following weeks, I started paying closer attention to how my family interacted with Sarah at other family events. What I discovered was a pattern of subtle bullying that had been going on since our engagement. They would make comments about her background, her education, her career, and her appearance that were disguised as jokes or friendly observations. They would exclude her from family photos or conversations. They would change plans without telling her or make decisions about events without asking her input. My mother would constantly compare Sarah to my brother's wife Linda, always pointing out how Linda had this quality or that achievement that Sarah lacked. My father would make comments about how Sarah was too sensitive or too dramatic when she got upset about their behavior. My siblings would gang up on her during family game nights or holiday celebrations, making her feel stupid or left out. I realized that my family had never intended to accept Sarah. They had decided before they even met her that she was not good enough for me. The dinner criticism was just one weapon in their arsenal of psychological abuse, designed to drive her away so they could maintain their tight family circle without any outsiders contaminating their perfect dynamic. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do to protect my wife and destroy their toxic family system. I spent 2 weeks planning exactly how I would cut my family out of our lives in the most devastating way possible. I knew that simply not showing up to dinners would not be enough. They would harass us, guilt trip us, and try to manipulate us into coming back. I needed to make it clear that their behavior had permanent consequences and that Sarah and I were never coming back to their toxic family dynamic. My first step was to document everything. I started keeping a detailed journal of every interaction between Sarah and my family. I wrote down every snide comment, every exclusion, every moment of disrespect. I also reached out to my younger siblings Emma and Josh to get their perspectives on what they had witnessed. Both of them confirmed that they had been uncomfortable with how the family treated Sarah, but felt powerless to intervene because of family loyalty pressure. Emma told me that Mom and Jennifer had private conversations about how Sarah was not right for me, and how they hoped I would eventually see that and end the relationship. Josh revealed that Dad and Mark had made cruel jokes about Sarah's appearance and intelligence when she was not around. My younger siblings had been watching this systematic bullying for months and feeling sick about it, but too intimidated by the family hierarchy to speak up. What I discovered next changed everything about how I planned to handle this situation. I learned that my family had actually been planning an intervention to convince me to leave Sarah. My mother had been collecting examples of Sarah's supposed failures as a wife and family member. She had been building a case about how Sarah was controlling me, isolating me from family, and changing my personality in negative ways. They were planning to present this intervention at Christmas dinner in front of the entire extended family to humiliate Sarah and pressure me into choosing between her and them. This revelation made me realize that my family was not just thoughtlessly cruel. They were actively malicious and calculating in their campaign to destroy my marriage. They were willing to ambush and humiliate my wife in front of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins to achieve their goal of driving her away. The dinner criticism had been just the beginning of a long-term psychological warfare campaign. I decided that if they wanted to play games, I would show them what real strategic thinking looked like. My plan had 3 phases designed to hit them where it would hurt most: their reputation, their family unity, and their precious monthly dinner tradition. Phase 1 was the reputation destruction. I compiled all my documentation of their treatment of Sarah into a detailed letter that I sent to every member of the extended family. I included specific quotes, dates, and examples of their behavior. I explained how they had systematically bullied my wife, lied about her cooking, and planned to humiliate her at Christmas dinner. I made it clear that their actions had nothing to do with family standards or traditions, and everything to do with cruel exaltation and psychological abuse. The response from the extended family was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive of Sarah and me. My grandparents were horrified when they learned how their grandchildren had been treating my wife. My aunts and uncles were disgusted by the planned intervention ambush. Several cousins reached out to apologize for not noticing the mistreatment and to offer their support. The family reputation my parents and older siblings cared so much about was destroyed overnight. His reaction when he realized what I had done was priceless, and exactly what I had hoped for. My father called me screaming about how I had embarrassed the family and turned everyone against them. He demanded that I retract my letter and apologize to the extended family for lying about their behavior. When I calmly told him that everything in the letter was true and documented, he threatened to cut me out of his will and disown me completely. I laughed and told him that being cut out of a toxic family was exactly what I wanted. My mother tried a different approach. She called Sarah directly to apologize and beg for forgiveness. She claimed that she had not realized how her behavior was affecting Sarah, and that she wanted to make things right. Sarah listened politely, and then told her that the damage was permanent, and that we would not be attending any family events ever again. Mom started crying and begging, but Sarah hung up on her. Mark and Jennifer tried to rally the older generation against me by claiming that I was being manipulated by my wife, and that I would regret choosing her over family. But their credibility was destroyed when Emma and Josh publicly supported my decision, and confirmed that everything in my letter was accurate. My younger siblings had found their voices and were finally standing up to the family bullies. But I wasn't finished. The next phase guaranteed that their family unity would never recover. Phase 2 was splitting the family permanently. I reached out to Emma and Josh privately and explained that they did not have to continue participating in a family dynamic that made them uncomfortable. I told them they could maintain relationships with whoever they wanted without having to choose sides, but that I would support them if they decided to distance themselves from the toxic family members. Emma was the first to follow my lead. She announced that she would no longer be attending monthly family dinners because she could not support how they had treated Sarah. She said that watching them systematically bully my wife had made her realize that family loyalty should not require accepting cruel behavior. She chose to maintain relationships with Josh and me while cutting contact with our parents and older siblings. Josh initially tried to stay neutral and maintain relationships with everyone. But when our parents and older siblings started pressuring him to choose sides and demanded that he convince Emma and me to come back, he realized that they were never going to change. 3 months after I cut contact, Josh also stopped attending family events. He said that the family dinners had become uncomfortable guilt trip sessions where everyone talked about how to get the younger generation back, instead of actually enjoying each other's company. The family that had been so proud of their unity and tradition was now split into 2 camps that barely spoke to each other. The older generation had lost 3 of their 5 children in their attempt to get rid of one daughter-in-law. Their precious family tradition was dying because they had prioritized their prejudices over actual family relationships. The consequences were immediate and devastating for everyone who had participated in bullying Sarah. Mom started calling Emma, crying about how the family was falling apart and begging her to help fix things. Emma told her that the family fell apart because of their choices and that she was not responsible for cleaning up their mess. Mom then tried to guilt trip her by saying that she was breaking Grandma's heart and destroying decades of family tradition. Emma responded that maybe they should have thought about those consequences before they decided to torture Sarah for 2 years. Dad's anger issues, which had always been barely contained, got much worse after losing 3 children in 1 year. He started drinking more heavily and taking his frustration out on his coworkers. His supervisor had to have multiple conversations with him about his attitude and behavior at work. The stress of the family falling apart combined with his refusal to take responsibility for his actions made him impossible to work with. Mark and Jennifer found themselves isolated from both the younger generation and the extended family. Their spouses started questioning why their own children were being excluded from relationships with their cousins Emma, Josh, Sarah, and me. Mark's wife, Linda, began to wonder if her acceptance in the family was conditional, and what would happen if she ever fell out of favor. Jennifer's husband started to see the family dynamics more clearly, and began supporting his wife's attempts to reconcile with me. But the most satisfying consequence was watching their monthly dinner tradition completely collapse. Phase 3 was the complete destruction of their precious family tradition that they claimed was more important than treating people with basic respect. Without Emma, Josh, Sarah, and me, the monthly dinners lost half their participants. The remaining family members tried to continue the tradition, but the dinners became awkward affairs where everyone sat around talking about the missing family members instead of enjoying each other's company. My grandmother, who had been the matriarch of these dinners for decades, announced that she would no longer attend because she was ashamed of how her children had treated Sarah. She said that family dinners were supposed to bring people together, not drive them apart through cruelty and exclusion. When the family matriarch withdrew her support, the tradition lost its emotional foundation. The extended family also started declining invitations to the monthly dinners. My aunts and uncles did not want to be associated with the toxic behavior my parents and older siblings had displayed. My cousins were uncomfortable attending events where half the family was missing due to preventable drama. The large, joyous gatherings that my family had been so proud of dwindled to small, tense meals with just the immediate family bullies. And then his whole world completely collapsed when the consequences extended beyond just family relationships. Dad's drinking and anger issues finally caught up with him at work 6 months after I cut contact. He had an explosive confrontation with his supervisor during a team meeting where he started screaming about disrespect and betrayal. His coworkers were shocked by his unprofessional behavior, and his supervisor immediately suspended him pending a workplace conduct review. The company decided that his anger management problems made him a liability and terminated his employment after 22 years with the firm. Mom's emotional breakdown over the family falling apart affected her ability to maintain her social relationships and community involvement. She had always been active in church groups and neighborhood committees, but she became so obsessed with getting her children back that she neglected her other responsibilities. Friends and neighbors started avoiding her because every conversation became about her family drama and how her ungrateful children had abandoned her. Mark's marriage started suffering because his wife Linda realized that if the family could systematically exclude and bully Sarah, they could do the same thing to her if she ever disagreed with them. She started questioning whether Mark's loyalty to his toxic family was more important to him than protecting his own wife and children. Linda began setting boundaries about which family events she would attend and demanded that Mark stand up for her if his family ever treated her poorly. Jennifer's relationship with her own children became strained when they started asking why they could not see their uncle, aunt, and cousins anymore. Her teenage daughter was particularly upset about losing her relationship with Emma, who had been her favorite aunt and role model. When Jennifer tried to explain that sometimes families have disagreements, her daughter pointed out that disagreements should not involve years of bullying and cruelty. The ripple effects of their behavior destroyed not just their relationships with Sarah and me, but their standing in the community, their marriages, their careers, and their relationships with their own children. But the most devastating consequence was realizing that they had destroyed something irreplaceable for no good reason. 7 months after I cut contact, my younger brother Josh told me that Dad had started talking about how much he missed me and regretted the way things had ended. Mom had apparently said that she wished she had been kinder to Sarah and that she would do anything to have her family back together. Mark and Jennifer were starting to admit that maybe they had been too harsh in their treatment of my wife. But their regret came too late. They had spent 2 years systematically destroying Sarah's confidence and self-worth. They had planned to humiliate her in front of the entire extended family. They had prioritized their prejudices and control over basic human decency. The damage they had done to my wife and our marriage was permanent, and no amount of regret could undo the pain they had caused. Josh told me that the remaining family members sat around during their failed dinner attempts talking about how things used to be better when everyone was together. They reminisced about holidays and celebrations from before Sarah joined the family, as if those memories could somehow erase the reality of what they had become. They talked about reaching out to me but never actually did, because they knew that any conversation would require them to take responsibility for their actions. Emma reported that Mom had started asking her what she could do to fix things with Sarah and me. When Emma told her that a genuine apology and changed behavior might be a start, Mom said that she did not know how to apologize for something that had gotten so out of hand. She seemed to think that the years of bullying had just happened by accident, rather than being the result of deliberate choices to exclude and hurt my wife. The family that had been so proud of their unity and tradition had become a cautionary tale about how prejudice and cruelty can destroy everything you claim to value. 8 months after cutting contact with my toxic family members, Sarah and I have never been happier or more at peace. We spent the holidays with Emma and Josh, creating new traditions that are based on love and respect, rather than obligation and hierarchy. We hosted dinners for friends who appreciate Sarah's cooking and treat her with the kindness she deserves. We built a chosen family of people who value us both equally. Sarah's confidence has completely recovered from the years of systematic undermining. She started a food blog that has gained thousands of followers who love her recipes and cooking tips. The same curry that my parents criticized and then praised when they thought I made it became one of her most popular posts. She wrote about the experience of being bullied by in-laws and received hundreds of supportive comments from people who had gone through similar situations. Our daughter will grow up knowing that family is defined by love and respect, not by blood and tradition. She will never have to watch her mother be humiliated or excluded by people who are supposed to care about her. We are teaching her that it is okay to walk away from toxic relationships, even when they involve family members, and that protecting the people you love is more important than maintaining uncomfortable peace. Emma and Josh have also thrived since distancing themselves from the toxic family dynamics. Emma started graduate school and is pursuing a career in social work, inspired by her experience of standing up to bullies and protecting vulnerable people. Josh moved to a different city for a job opportunity and says he feels free from the family drama for the first time in years. Both of them maintain close relationships with Sarah and me, proving that real family bonds can survive and strengthen when wet. They are based on genuine care rather than obligation. The older generation continues to struggle with the consequences of their choices. Dad found a new job, but had to take a significant pay cut and has ongoing issues with his supervisor because of his attitude problems. Mom has become increasingly isolated as friends and neighbors distance themselves from her constant complaints about her ungrateful children. Mark and Jennifer are dealing with marital problems as their spouses question their loyalty to toxic family members over their own nuclear Amelies. Last month, Josh told me that the monthly family dinners have officially ended. The last attempt was a disaster where only 4 people showed up and spent the entire evening complaining about the missing family members instead of enjoying each other's company. The tradition that supposedly meant everything to them died because they were willing to sacrifice actual relationships for the sake of control and prejudice. My grandmother, the original matriarch of the family dinners, told Emma that she was proud of us for standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. She said that real family traditions should bring out the best in people, not enable bullying and cruelty. She regrets that her children learned the wrong lessons about family loyalty and hopes that our generation will do better with our own children. The extended family has been incredibly supportive of our decision to cut contact with the toxic family members. Several aunts and uncles have reached out to maintain relationships with Sarah, Emma, Josh, and me, while making it clear that they do not approve of how my parents and older siblings behave. Our cousins have organized gatherings that specifically exclude the family bullies, proving that we have not lost our entire family support system. Sarah and I are planning to buy a house next year and start hosting our own monthly dinners for the people who actually care about us. We want to create the kind of inclusive, loving family tradition that my parents claim to value, but never actually practice. Our dinners will be about bringing people together through kindness and respect, not excluding people through criticism and psychological warfare. The most important lesson we learned from this experience is that family relationships require mutual respect and basic human decency to survive. When family members choose cruelty over kindness, control over acceptance, and prejudice over love, they forfeit their right to be part of your life. Walking away from toxic family members is not selfish or dramatic. It is necessary for your mental health and the protection of the people you love. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between your spouse and toxic family members? Share your stories about standing up to family bullies in the comments below. How did you handle relatives who tried to undermine your marriage or exclude your partner from family events? If you are dealing with in-laws or family members who are systematically bullying your spouse, remember that you have the power to protect the person you chose to build a life with. You do not owe anyone access to your family if they cannot treat your spouse with basic respect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is remove toxic people from your life, even when they share your DNA. Like this video if you believe that chosen family can be stronger than blood family. Subscribe for more stories about people who chose love over loyalty to toxic relatives. Have you ever had to teach family members that their behavior has consequences? Tell us about the moment you realized that protecting your spouse was more important than keeping the peace with difficult relatives.